My name is Henry, and have you ever wondered how many mornings you have let slip away? Those mornings when you could have simply lifted your face to feel the sunlight. Have you ever felt that your heart is like a clock that never stops ticking, always rushing, always pushing forward until you forget how to listen to the smallest sounds? The sound of tea pouring into a cup, the gentle calls of birds on the porch, or the sound of your wife breathing evenly in her sleep. I remember the first time I realized I was living that way. It did not come from a great tragedy or a harsh judgment. It came from an ordinary morning when I looked at the clock and realized I had forgotten my daughter's birthday for 3 years in a row. I sent her a late message through my work email, and she replied with a short line. "It's okay, Dad." It was not a sad message, but it pierced me like a tiny needle through the web of wrong priorities I had woven. Even now, I still remember that lump in my throat. It felt as if I had left a child waiting for me outside in the cold winter without even realizing it. If you have ever felt your heart stretched between responsibilities and the little things that make life tender, please sit with me for a while. And if my words touch something in you, I invite you to subscribe, leave a like, or just write a few words. Because none of us have to walk this road of learning to slow down alone. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other's names and stories were passed along from one porch step to another. My father was a carpenter, his hands thick with calluses and always carrying the scent of cedar wood, a smell that, even now, reminds me of quiet patience. My mother was a gentle woman who always prepared dinner early and wiped the table with a soft cloth so tender that I can still imagine the feeling of that fabric under my fingers. We were not rich, but our house was filled with laughter and the warmth of family dinners, where yellow light poured down over stories both happy and sad. I left that town when I was young, filled with the eagerness of someone who wanted to prove himself. I learned to adapt to the city, to speak faster, work harder, and trade eye contact for emails. My first job was in sales at a small company. Then I became a manager and slowly climbed the ladder, step by step, forgetting to ever stop and look out the window. I used to believe that once I hit a certain milestone, reached a certain salary, and bought a house in a good neighborhood, I would finally find something called peace. But peace, for me, turned out to be a moving target, always just a little out of reach. Each time I got close, it stepped back, and I chased again and again. There was a time when I thought speed measured my worth. I took pride in replying to emails within 10 minutes and always being at the top of my task list. My co-workers called me sharp-minded. My family saw me as a pillar, and my neighbors nodded approvingly when they saw my car parked in front of the house. But beneath that surface, there was a quiet unease, like the constant hum of a machine somewhere in the background. I missed my son's first practice session because of an overlapping meeting. I was late to a parent conference because of an unexpected business trip. I answered calls during dinner, clutching my phone like a shield. Each of those small actions seemed harmless at first, but together they built up, like a thin layer of dust on the wooden family table. And one day, I realized I could no longer see the grain of the wood. The moment of change did not come as a storm. It came like a small wave, gentle but strong enough to make the teacup on the table tremble. It happened on an autumn afternoon. The leaves were falling quietly. The sky was gray, and the air carried that faint smell of damp earth after the rain. I was driving to the office as usual, with a to-do list that seemed endless, like a roll of film that never stopped unspooling. At a red light, I looked outside and saw an old man sitting by the roadside selling flowers. He sat on a small wooden stool with a few bunches of wildflowers tied loosely together with a piece of string. His face was full of wrinkles, but his smile was gentle. Not the smile of someone hiding something, but the kind that comes from knowing exactly what you are doing. Cars kept speeding by and no one stopped. But something inside me stirred, like a whisper saying, "Stop." So I did. I pulled over, stepped out, and for a moment, even my own legs felt unfamiliar. I bought a bunch of flowers and paid in cash. My hands trembled slightly as I received them. The old man looked at me and said, "These flowers only bloom beautifully when someone looks at them every day." His voice was slow and calm. I held the bouquet close, and the noise of the city seemed to fade away. For the first time in many years, I felt time, not as an enemy to outrun, but as a friend to listen to. When I got home, I placed the flowers on the dining table, turned off my phone, and just sat there. No emails, no calls, only the steady ticking of the clock on the wall and the soft rustle of petals in the afternoon light. I thought of my daughter, my son, my mother and father, and of all the days I'd been absent from their lives, for reasons that sounded noble, but were empty. I cried, not from crushing regret, but from the realization that I still had time to make things right. After that day, I did not rush into some grand transformation. I began with the smallest things, like learning to take a deep breath before opening my email or deciding to have dinner with my wife at least 3 nights a week without letting work interfere. I called my daughter just to ask about her day, not to tell her what to do. I attended my grandson's piano recital, sitting quietly at the back of the theater, clapping like any other guest. And for the first time, I felt a kind of joy that was different, simple, and free from ambition. I learned to take morning walks, not caring about how fast or how far. What mattered was giving that time fully to the sound of the leaves, the smell of flowers, and a simple hello to a neighbor. I remember one summer evening sitting on the porch with my wife. We did not say much. We just held hands and watched the sunset. It was such a delicate moment, like a small piece of cake whose sweetness I had long forgotten because I was too busy devouring too many other things. Slowing down did not mean giving up goals or responsibilities. It was a choice. I still go to the office. I still care about my work. But now I know the difference between the things I must finish and the things that make me feel alive. The clearest thing I have learned is the art of being present. When we are truly present, we are not just there in body. We are listening with the heart. I remember my mother once told me about an old friend of hers who went to the riverbank every day just to sit and watch the water flow. People said he was senile, that he had nothing to do, but my mother said, he still remembers something we often forget. He knows how to wait. That kind of waiting is not about doing nothing. It is about allowing life to sink into you. Old stories started coming back to me. Family dinners, laughter, the reunions I had missed because of work. I began writing letters to old friends with pen and ink, mailing them through the post office as a way to slow myself down and see my own handwriting again. People wrote back with stamps and slow words, and I read each line as if reading a poem. There was one night after my wife passed away when I thought grief would swallow me whole. And yes, the sadness was heavy, but what helped me through was not distracting myself with busyness, but allowing the sadness to exist, to remember every little detail of the woman I loved. I sat beside her chair, took out one of her silk scarves, and breathed in its scent, a faint mix of perfume and soap. Memories came rushing back, how she smiled when I came home late, how she waited with a warm meal, how she told me to rest. I used to get angry at those words, thinking she wanted to hold me back from my ambitions. Now I understand. Every reminder was her way of loving me. I cried for the days that were gone, but I also smiled at the small, beautiful things I remembered. Grief taught me that slowing down does not erase memories. It purifies them. Living slowly also gave me space to ask myself the big and small questions. How do I want to be remembered? What have I done to deserve the love I've been given? What can I do today to make someone I love feel warm? These questions led me to a new habit: listening without judgment. When my daughter called to talk about her struggles at work, I no longer rushed to give her advice or lecture her on how to be more efficient. I simply listened until she finished, until I could feel the weariness in her words. That kind of listening makes the other person breathe easier, and I realized I was giving her the most precious gift of all: my full presence. I learned to say, "I hear you," instead of, "You should do this or that." I started practicing gratitude every night before bed, thinking of 3 good things that happened that day, even if it was just a warm cup of coffee, a short phone call, or a rainfall that washed the dust off the streets. Not everyone supported my journey. Some former colleagues looked at me like a stranger because I stopped attending meaningless meetings. Some friends told me I was getting old, that I was missing out on opportunities. I listened, but I also understood that everyone runs their own race. I remembered something an old friend once told me: "Henry, you run fast, but sometimes you're sprinting toward a dead end." Those words freed me from the last traces of guilt. I realized I do not have to be perfect, and I do not have to prove that I am. The slowness I chose is not giving up. It is a way of living. I found joy in simple routines I once thought were trivial. I learned to trim the small garden behind my house and treat it like a little ritual. Sometimes I sat at the kitchen table, chopping onions for dinner, and occasionally picked up a pen to write a few lines for my children and grandchildren. I began recording family stories. Memories of my grandparents, my parents, and the hard times we went through together. I wanted my children to understand that not just results, but the journey itself is what truly matters. Storytelling, I realized, is also a form of presence. When we tell stories, the listener joins us, and the memory comes alive again, not lost, but reborn. Sometimes I still feel shy talking about slow love, because in our modern world, speed is what gets celebrated. But slowing down does not contradict efficiency. It simply clarifies what really matters. I still get things done, but I no longer let them drain my soul. I choose weekends to go fishing with my son, not to catch more fish, but to talk, to laugh, to listen to the soft splash of water against the shore. Those moments build love in a way money or status never could. I learned to choose quality over quantity. One deep conversation with my child means more than 10 shallow ones. Something I did not expect was how slowing down helped me understand death, not as something terrifying, but as part of the cycle. When my wife was still alive, we used to sit on a park bench and watch the leaves fall. She once said, "We're all going somewhere, Henry. But if your heart can still tremble for the little things, the journey will feel light." Those words echo inside me now. I no longer fear loss the way I used to. What I fear instead is not being there when life's final moments come. Because the truth is, only by slowing down can we love deeply, cry rightly, and remember fully. I see my mother again in the smallest gestures. The way she brewed tea at just the right temperature. The way she folded my father's shirt before he went to work. Those things seem tiny when you are rushing, but when you sit still and notice, they become treasures. Let me share a few things I've learned, not as moral lessons, but as small pieces of my life that I wish to pass on. First, do not wait for someday to live. Someday rarely comes if you keep postponing life for something that has not yet happened. Have dinner with family today. Call an old friend. Light a candle for dinner and look into the eyes of the person next to you. Second, presence is a skill you can practice. Start small. Turn off notifications for an hour. Eat without your phone. Write a letter by hand. Third, hurry adds nothing to the soul. It only empties it. Learn to tell the difference between rushing because you must and rushing because you are used to it. Fourth, keep your rituals. Family dinners, bedtime stories, Sunday gatherings. For they are the anchors that hold us together. Sometimes I wonder, if I had known all this earlier, would I have done things differently? I think my rush made me who I am. It brought me opportunities, stability, pride. But I wish I had known sooner that you can give your all and know when to stop, so I do not regret. I simply sit here, looking back, and invite you to think about it with me. If you're listening to this from a warm chair somewhere, please allow yourself to slow down a little. Try one small change tomorrow. Maybe drink your tea without opening your laptop. Take a walk with someone you love. Or call your mother just to hear her voice. Those tiny things, when gathered over time, can become a different kind of life, not grand by society's standards, but full by the heart's. One morning, as I walked down the hospital corridor, watching people waiting, I thought about what I had once been so busy chasing. I thought about the missed calls, the quiet dinners, the promises I forgot. I told myself that every day we should leave a gentle trace, a smile, a hug, something kind. Those traces do not need to be big. They only need to be sincere. Once, when I visited my son's home, my little grandson ran up and hugged me, smelling of baby shampoo and the old couch. In that moment, I felt recharged in a way no money or achievement could ever give. Those hugs only exist when we are truly there. The day I stopped rushing through life was not just a day I paused. It was the beginning of a series of conscious choices. Now, I wake up a little earlier to drink tea and watch through the window. I send longer messages to old friends. I keep a habit of writing in my journal every week, so I do not forget what truly matters. I walk more, watching rooftops, listening to the small stories of the streets. Sometimes I still meet that old flower seller at the corner. He walks slower now, but his smile is the same. We exchange a few words, not many, but enough to feel that two lives, two stories, can still touch through honesty. I share this story not to claim I found the secret to life, but to invite you to try. Give yourself a small experiment. For 1 week, spend 15 minutes a day just sitting still. No music, no plans, no distractions. Just breathe, look, and feel. You will see that small things suddenly grow bigger. You will realize that the simple moments are not rewards for the future. They are life itself, right here, right now. As I end this story, I think of my wife, my mother, my father, the people who gave me roots to grow. I think of my children, wishing that they will live fully, love deeply, and know when to let go. And I think of you, whoever you are, reading or listening. And I want to whisper, do not run so fast that you forget the way home. Remember to light a candle for tomorrow, but do not forget to smile today. Life does not need you to be perfect. It only needs you to be present. And if someday you wish to begin, remember, Henry, an ordinary man with plenty of mistakes but just as many chances to make things right, is sitting here with you, smiling because today we stopped rushing.